Welcome to the Professionals of the Inland Empire show with your host, John Tulac.
Welcome to another edition of Professionals of the Inland Empire, affectionately known as PI. I'm John Tulac, an international business attorney located in Claremont, and I am your host. I am privileged to have as my guests each week outstanding professionals in the Inland Empire, people that you as a business person located in the IE need to know about and work with. These are people that I trust, I work with on a collaborative basis every day through Provisors, a professional networking organization that's by invitation only, and it's all over the country. And we have 4 very strong chapters here in the IE. So sit back and relax as we talk with Michael Ventimiglia and Melissa Swift today. Michael is an estate planning attorney with Taylor Simonson Winter in Claremont. Melissa Swift is with LifeStep Financial and is also in Claremont, and they collaborate with one another. So we're going to talk about what each one of them do, how they work with each other together, and who knows what. So be prepared for the next half hour. Michael, let's start with you. You are an estate planning attorney. Give us a little background and how you got to where you are doing what you do, and then you can tell us how you do it.
So like I said, my name is Michael Ventimiglia, Taylor Simonson Winter. So I always wanted to be an attorney. Little kids say they want to be attorneys. Little kids don't want to say they want to be tax attorneys or estate plan attorneys. But as I sort of progressed on to law school, I remember reading an article in undergrad that listed the top 5 happiest attorneys. And number 1 was tax attorneys. And I said, that's what I want to be. And so I sort of followed on that path, took some accounting courses. After law school at UCLA, I got my master's in taxation. And in the fall of 2004, I was hired here at Taylor Simonson Winter in Claremont. At the time, the firm work was roughly 60% tax work and 40% estate planning work, tax collections and so forth. And I was ostensibly hired as the associate to help the 2 partners dealing with tax. Within 6 months, most of my work was estate planning. And 20 years later, our firm is exclusively estate planning. It's really subsumed the tax business. And we do estate planning, trust administration, some probates, and some business planning that goes along with that. It's a natural fit. People don't realize that revocable living trust, which is what we specialize in, really arose out of tax planning, minimizing estate taxes and so forth. With the in-state tax exemption increases, that's not as much of a concern for our day-to-day folk. But a nice side effect of revocable living trust is avoiding probate, and that affects everybody. So that's what we do and how we help.
Super. Of course, you are working with a couple of institutions in Claremont. Certainly Marshall Taylor and his wife Ellen were pillars of the community and well known. And Mark Winter, a longtime Rotarian, good friend of mine. It's sometimes hard being the guy who's not the named partner when you've got all that celebrity that is in the office. What was that like?
As somebody who didn't grow up in Claremont, that was something I discovered as I worked here. I want to say within my first year, I don't think it was 04, it may have been 05, but you may correct me if I'm wrong, was when Ms. Taylor ran for mayor. So that sort of instantly steeped the entire firm in sort of Claremont politics and so forth. But what was great is those are people I learned from, and not necessarily the law, but how to work with clients, who feel they know you maybe a little more than they don't or do, and how to be gracious and how to keep a good network alive, a good networking group alive, and separate from maybe your own personal foibles. I don't mean to be too graphic on that, but I think that's the double-edged side of sort of local stardom, and it was interesting. And as to being a named partner and such. I've been a partner now for 8 years at the firm. My other partner, Bonnie Amati, was the other associate when I was hired. She's been here 27 years. I've been here 21. And neither of us have decided to change the name of the firm simply because of how well known Marshall Taylor, Karen Simonson, and Mark Winter are in this community, and how I don't want to necessarily use the word beloved when it comes with an attorney, but how well respected they are. We've been here 35 years. We're a big fish in a little pond, and we're happy to keep that name going and continue the good work that they started.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, more power to you in that regard. Melissa, let's turn to you. LifeStep Financial. How'd you get there?
Yeah,
And tell us
yeah, sure.
what to
So
do.
I have maybe a somewhat unique path of getting to where I'm at, not as straightforward maybe as Michael's, but I actually majored in architecture in college, kind of was working in the time of the big crash, 2008, 2009. There was no jobs to be found. I wasn't getting any hours at the architecture firm I was working at. And my mom actually was doing real estate, and she was like, hey, why don't you become partners with me in real estate? And not that that was necessarily a better profession during the same time, but I was like, okay, why not? While I kind of figure out next steps. Fast forward some years from that, we met up with Henry Ford, which is the owner of the firm here. And just met to kind of try to collaborate and, refer business to each other. And so we started doing that. And fast forward some years after that, he kind of approached me with the opportunity and, said, hey, I'm looking to expand the business and grow the firm. And I can teach you the business, but it's really hard to find good people in the financial industry that he felt maybe aligned with his values of the firm, making sure that you're always doing what was right for the client rather than just seeing dollar signs over everyone's head. He liked the way that I had, treated and handled his clients on the real estate side. And he thought, well, the majority of our clients are also real estate investors. So it might be a good addition to have someone on the team that has more experience in that area. Why don't you hop on board? And, after a few years of kind of being like, I don't know, I'm good. I had never really thought of finances as a career path for me, despite the fact that I had always been, always been really disciplined with my own finances and, kind of interested in that sense. But again, never thought about turning that into a career. Eventually I said, okay, let me see what this opportunity is about. And the more I got to understand his vision for the firm, meet the team, it just felt like the right fit. So I decided to hop on. That was in January of 2020, which was a very interesting time to change careers with COVID right around the corner. So I felt like I got a little bit of a faster education maybe when things are volatile and all over the place. You kind of have to learn the ropes a little bit faster. And as Michael kind of alluded to, how you deal with clients and the relationships, not just the business side, but how do you learn to manage people's emotions and fears and really build and deepen that relationship side. We focus a lot on not just helping people, optimize, let's say, their finances, but also the financial wellness side, or more that, how they think about their finances, the psychological side of that as well. So anyways, that's how I've kind of came to be here. And I'm a financial planner here, and I've kind of taken on this unofficially titled role of Director of Client Experience. So just helping shape the direction of the firm in terms of what the clients experience through us, our processes and systems in place to make sure we're giving them the best experience possible. And again, feeling as great as they can and as comfortable as possible with the direction that they're headed. So with that being said, we do, of course, your investment management, financial planning services that one would probably expect, but I think we're not your typical financial planning firm. We have what we call our concierge services. It's similar to family office type services. So we really target working with business owners. A lot of them tend to be blue collar business owners with a net worth between maybe 10 and 100 million, where they kind of start to gain the complexities with multiple businesses, multiple pieces of real estate, where they would maybe need somewhat of a family office, but obviously the money that it takes to go get yourself your own family office is pretty steep. So we've always thought, how do we bring more of those types of services in-house where we can provide them to these kind of growing business owners and real estate investors? So we help them, manage their real estate portfolio. We help them, we kind of can become the liaison with all of their different professionals that they work with, be it their attorney, all the way to their gardener. It's very customized. So that's one of the things that we aim to do. Again, just how do we bring as much of that in-house as possible to really help all the aspects of their finances, not just what's happening in the stock market.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, sorry.
And I will say I've known Henry Ford for a number of years, not as well as I knew Mark and Marshall, but he's a very creative guy and has high ambitions that I can see you are achieving for him at LifeStep Financial. I like the title, Director of Client Experience, and you described some of that. And that's one of the things that I think makes you special, right? Because financial planner covers a lot of things, and yet you've got a very particular focus here with blue collar owners of businesses that have done really, really well. So that seems to be, is that your niche particularly?
Yes. So we do have kind of multiple locations and growing locations. So the niche kind of varies depending on the area. So we have a gentleman that works out of San Diego, and we're hoping to open an office there. He might have a different, more focused industry within the niche of business owners and real estate investors. We also are growing a team in Nashville. So again, that might have a different niche within that kind of overarching business owner and real estate investor sector. But we find here in the Inland Empire, as you guys are well aware, that's a pretty big business here. And we have just found that we mesh really well with the personality type that tends to go with that type of owner, really down to earth, authentic, kind of shoot them straight. And so we really enjoy working with those clients, and we find that we're just a good fit for the types of services that they need.
Okay. Well, as you can probably tell, audience, that I'm talking to two very personable people here, and they're providing services that are personal in nature. You have your own finances, you have your own goals and objectives, and having people who can not only help you realize those goals financially, but then make sure that you keep it.
Yeah.
with a sound financial plan and a sound estate plan for handing it off ultimately to the heirs. So how do you two collaborate with each other? What you do go hand in hand with each other. Michael, I'll go back to you.
Well, the way you work, I not to speak what a financial planner does, but a financial planner plans for a client's future, and whether we like to admit it or not, that includes death at the end. So any financial planner worth their salt is going to ask how that estate plan's going. And we're lucky enough to be often at the end of referrals from financial planners, accountants, and so forth, who care about their clients' sort of complete financial purpose or picture. The other thing is that we as estate planners can often craft and identify when estate taxes may be an issue on the higher net worth clients. The current exemptions, $14 million per person, $15 million starting next year, or $30 million for a married couple. So it doesn't touch a lot of people, but it touches enough. And it's easy enough to minimize that with some good planning. So we'll work together with financial planners to identify maybe sources of liquidity and funding if estate tax is going to be an issue. And we rely on these guys with the calculators to actually do the numbers. I do the typey with the words. They could punch in the numbers. And then, of course, we work with financial financial planners because a trust is only as good as the assets it holds. And what's great about working with competent, holistic financial planners like LifeSteps or others is that we're able to work with a client, set up a trust, and then coordinate with their office to make sure assets are properly titled. That's kind of the number one reason for probates with people who have trust is they leave an asset out of the trust, and then we got to go to court and they got to pay all this money and wait all this time that they tried to avoid by setting up a trust in the first place. So we're able to work with them on both the trust assets and non-trust assets, beneficiary designations, and so forth. And it's so much easier for our office to get a closure on something and for the client to get something done correctly the first time by working with a good financial planning office.
Mm-hmm.
Makes absolute sense. Melissa,
Yeah.
how do you get people to understand the importance of having
The real
that
challenge.
nasty will and
Yeah.
especially if you have assets, got to have the trust too.
Yes, that is definitely, I would say, one of the big challenges. And unfortunately, a lot of times, so clients will have it on their to-do list, right? But it oftentimes falls to the bottom. We meet with our clients throughout the year and we're always reminding them if they haven't done it or maybe needs an update. But unfortunately, a lot of the main trigger I see to actually get clients into the office is because they're handling the estate from their parents who just passed and it was a disaster. So they're like, oh yeah, I realize that this is really important. So again, for us, we try to, when we're meeting with the clients throughout the year and checking in on that process, if they don't have one yet, we've created a beneficiary and ownership log that I've shared with Michael, and that's something that we fill out for them with the information that we have, but we try to go over it and say, okay, so if you were to pass away, this is what would happen. And we try to really make sure things are set up as they want it to be, even if it looks like they're set up. They might say, well, that's how the trust was, but maybe it was a blended family and people have passed and it's complicated. And they're like, yeah, you know what? I don't think that's exactly reflective of what I still want to have. So we send a good amount of people Michael's way because we love him here and they do a great job at their office. But yeah, I think it's that staying in touch, that communication, and really just making sure they understand what actually would happen if they pass and they don't have things set up properly. So we hope to hit that home for them. And I would just make one other point that I always thought was interesting. I was having a conversation with a real estate agent out in Pasadena one day, and I was telling her how our largest referral that goes out is to estate planning attorneys. And she said, oh, well, you must deal with a lot of small clients because anyone with a large estate, of course, would already have a trust in place, et cetera, et cetera. And you would be surprised at how often that is not true. Clients, accumulate wealth, and sometimes in the blink of an eye, before you know it, for them, they're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm now worth, whatever it is. And they still don't have anything set up. So I don't think, and Michael, you probably speak to this better, but the size of client doesn't necessarily always mean that they have everything in order. So that's hopefully why they have people like us to be looking out for them for those types of things.
And just to interject, that's 100% true. And to stress something that you alluded to, it is so important not to just do it once. A revocable living trust is a document that should grow and change with you. As assets are acquired, as people pass away or move in and out of your life, as arguments with kids grow into giant issues, those estate plan documents should be pulled out and looked at. They need to reflect who you are now and not necessarily who you were when you set that up. Especially nowadays, when Melissa talks about clients acquiring wealth and new assets and so forth, one of the things everyone acquired was this ginormous estate tax exemption. So there are people who have estate plans that were drafted in the early 2000s and the 1990s when the estate tax exemption was $600,000, $1 million. And they're very complicated with subtrust and irrevocable subtrust that are going to bind the hands of that surviving spouse. And you don't want to be surprised at the first spouse's death of what that survivor can or cannot do with their assets. So it's worthwhile as you level up or even as you level down to take a look at that and be, hey, is this still working for us? Is this still what we want? And that's a great thing that a financial planner could do. They are going to have a lot more touch points with somebody than we will as an estate plan attorney. The volume of our work, the amount of work we can't do, and the fact that we have, attorney-client privilege issues and ethical issues and all this sort of stuff. I'm not going to cold call a client every 3 months and say, hey, have you checked out your living trust? But a financial planner is going to be, hey, this is our quarterly review. This is how you're doing. By the way, you've doubled your assets. How's your trust looking? So we certainly rely on that sort of symbiotic relationship.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I see this all the time in representing businesses. It's like I remind them, do you have your trust? Do you have your will? When's the last time you reviewed it? With my longtime clients, I don't have to do that very often anymore because they've all taken that advice. With newer ones, it sometimes takes some repetition. But there's one more thing that I think ties into this, particularly with mom and pop outfits. Some of them end up with substantial businesses. I mean, one of my biggest clients has over 200 employees right now, and they keep growing like crazy. But it's essentially a husband and wife running the show. Well, they try to do everything right, and at some point, somebody else is going to have to run that company. Well, who's it going to be? And that's where business and succession planning comes in. So that ties to financial planning, and it ties to estate planning, and it ties to, at some point, whether you choose to retire or something flattens you and you're disabled, or who's going to take over? And that's what they don't want to think about. And that's where the financial planner and the estate planner, where they probably do have a relationship, becomes really, really important. Remind them,
absolutely. It's often a question of first impression when people come in for estate planning is we always start out the conversation by what are your assets, because I'm not being nosy, but they do drive certain choices on the estate plan. And when somebody has a partial ownership in a business, our first question is, give me a copy of the operating agreement or shareholder agreement, because regardless of your estate plan, those are going to control, those are your contracts with your other business owners, and they may affect your estate plan choices. If it's a long legacy family business, they may have restrictions on who could be trustee, who can inherit. So those will have to be part of it. As to the mom and pop business, the people who, turn around are suddenly worth $200 million with 500 employees. The discussion is often, you're not going to run this forever. Who's going to do it? And the knee jerk is often, well, we'll give it to the kids. Well, if the kids can't agree on who's going to sit in the back seat or front, they're not going to be able to run the business. You need to be honest. Clients need to be honest with themselves. And it's often a very long part of our discussion. Is there a kid who's part of the business already? Is that the one who's going to run it? Is there even an expectation that it's going to remain in the family? Is it going to be sold or otherwise gifted to key employees? If that's the case, start it now. There's ways to get that going, to involve people, to get that security. The other thing to sort of think about is the value of that business. I am often surprised how many business owners who have a small business or at least 100% ownership in a business don't really realize how much that's worth and how much of a percentage that is of their estate. If somebody has 3 kids and one kid is part of the business and they want to give that kid the business, Are they going to try to equalize the shares to everybody else? How
Mhm.
can they do that? Is it just off the top and they're going to let the kids fight over the fact that Timmy's getting a $100 million company and everybody else is getting a $10,000 check? They're hard questions. It's often one of the things too that requires parents to have a current estate plan discussion with their kids. A lot of times people like to hold this close to their vest and not often include the children in these choices. They don't want to scare them. They don't want to hear their input, what have you. But with the succession planning, and like I joke, unless you have a 2-season commitment from HBO, you want succession to go well. You don't want it to last forever. You want it to be as painless as possible. Include the kids in the discussion. Who
Mhm.
really wants that business? Be
Mhm.
honest. Be honest with yourselves. And it may be, hey, let's have a more robust shareholder agreement with my current business partners. Let's talk to a key employee about maybe an ESOP or some other buyout by the employees because nobody else wants it.
Mhm.
So it's about an honest discussion about the facts on the table and really sort of confronting the information that they may not have. And that's where financial planners really get involved because they're able to coordinate those valuations and really sort of say, hey, this is your 800-pound gorilla. Your house is, the other one, and how's that going to get split?
Mhm.
So it's a reality check for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. There's about 3 clients that I'm thinking of right now as we're having this conversation they own their own business and they have kids that they are planning to pass the business on to, but each situation is different. So one, like you said, some of the kids are in the business, right? There's multiple siblings. Some of the kids are in the business, but not all. So they're having the discussion of, okay, how do we equalize the estate for the kids that aren't in the business? One of the siblings doesn't have kids at all. So is she going to gift her shares or is she going to sell her shares to those kids? And then those shares have been gifted from generation to generation during the lifetime. So the up and coming generation is not going to have kids apparently. So they might end up selling. So then it's like, okay, well, if they just gift the shares to this new generation and then that generation sells, their cost basis is going to be through the roof because the shares have been gifted for decades upon decades. So what's the best play here and what's the best strategy? And again, like Michael was mentioning, the earlier you can kind of start that conversation and just discuss the options and the outcomes and get all your ducks in a row, the better. I find in a lot of times we are somewhat quarterbacking that situation where again we're having that frequent contact with them and we're kind of a good merge between what's happening on their personal side and incorporating that business. So those conversations come up and a good financial plan early on is going to help drive a lot of those decisions that they decide to make. And so we just want to make sure we have all the pieces kind of in place and we're helping them think through all those options and bringing in the right professionals as needed to help guide that conversation as well. But yeah, so important to be planning early and having those conversations with the generation because like you said, Michael, you might assume that they want to take it over, but they might either have no interest or not necessarily be capable yet of doing that. And there might be a lot of steps in between that need to happen. So,
Yeah, we saw that with our client base in the 2000s. Being in this area, we had a ton of dairy clients. And
mhm,
that was something that, there was assumed to be generational.
mhm.
And the generation coming up in the 2000s did not want the cows. And so it was a come to Jesus moment for a lot of people, a lot of those dairy holders on, hey, what's going to happen? And Melissa rightly mentioned cost basis and step up in basis on inheritance and the fact that sometimes it is best to wait until you pass away to do something. But there was a lot of planning ahead of time. And we have Eastvale because people didn't want to continue with the dairies.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course,
Yeah.
to be fair, California by that time didn't want the cows either.
It's true.
So they were going
It's
off to law school and getting MBA degrees and so
Yes,
on.
Yeah, exactly.
exactly.
And I think the other thing just to mention quickly with that too is if the business owner, family business, is planning on gifting that business to the next generation, really fine tuning and honing in on, do they still need any money from the business? We have some business owners that are like, no, I'm good, and I really just want to gift it to the next generation. And some that will need money to live their retirement or next chapter, however you want to phrase it these days, to live. So I think really one of the things that we can really help clients with is figuring out what that is and determining, do you need money from that business, and how are you going to get it out? Are you going to stay on? Are you going to consult? Are you taking a piece and selling it in some sense to the next generation and taking a piece, or can you just gift it and everything will be okay? So there's lots of options out there, and they just need to understand what those look like when it comes down to numbers and the reality of passing that along to the next generation.
Terrific. Well, folks, we're about at the end of our time. We're not strictly on a clock of a half hour, but it's in and about the area of a half hour. I want to thank Michael and Melissa for a fascinating conversation today that is directly relating to your business and your personal lives as well, because that's why you have a business, so you can have a nice personal life. So here are two good people to know, and we'll be back next week with two more really good people that you should know. This will be in the space of IT and cybersecurity, which we all have to think about all the time today. So that's it for now, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching or listening to, depending on the case, the Professionals of the Inland Empire show with your host, John W. Tulac. If you have a suggestion for a guest, email him at jwtulac, that's JWTULAC @gmail.com. jwtulac @gmail.com.